It's easy to think that a person's worth is defined by their appearance, especially in places where wealth and prestige are the currency of social exchange. But what happens when someone is treated like they don't belong, simply because of how they look? For Sarah, this was the reality she had been facing for most of her life. A simple woman with simple tastes, she had never been one to flaunt her wealth or status. She didn't care for flashy jewelry or designer labels. She found contentment in the little things: a quiet evening, a good book, and time spent with the people she loved. But one evening, everything changed. Sarah and her husband Alex had decided to dine at a prestigious restaurant that had long been a symbol of luxury, the kind of place where reservations were a must, and the air was thick with opulence. Sarah wasn't accustomed to such places, but Alex had insisted. He wanted to treat her, show her something different, something special. She walked in, her heart racing, wearing a simple but elegant dress, her hair styled modestly. To her, it was just another night out with the man she loved. But to the staff and the other patrons in the restaurant, it was clear they expected more. Their eyes lingered on her, judging, sizing her up. She could feel their gazes like needles, though she tried not to let it bother her. What happened next, however, was something Sarah never expected. Without warning, the manager approached them. His face was cold, his tone dismissive as he spoke. "I'm sorry, but we cannot serve you here. This is a fine dining establishment and your attire doesn't meet the standards." Sarah stood frozen, confused and humiliated. She had been rejected, dismissed, not because of who she was, but because she didn't fit into the mold they expected. As she gathered her thoughts, she felt a mix of anger and disbelief rising within her. But what she didn't know was that Alex, her husband, was about to show everyone in that room that they had made the biggest mistake of their lives. The manager's words stung, leaving Sarah speechless for a moment. The room, once filled with soft chatter and clinking glasses, seemed to fall away. All she could hear was the pounding of her own heartbeat, each beat growing louder as she felt the sting of rejection wash over her. Alex, noticing the sudden change in Sarah's demeanor, turned to her with concern. "Sarah, are you okay?" he whispered, his hand gently resting on her arm, his touch grounding her in the midst of her confusion. Before she could respond, the manager's words echoed in her mind again. "I'm sorry, but we cannot serve you here." The more she thought about it, the more her anger grew. Sarah wasn't one to let small insults affect her, but this felt different. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a deliberate judgment of her worth. She had never been the kind of person who needed fancy clothes or luxury to feel valuable, but this moment felt like a sharp reminder that some people didn't value her at all. But just as she opened her mouth to speak, Alex stood up, his face now set in a calm but unmistakably determined expression. He had been watching the whole exchange. His brow furrowed as he processed what had just happened. There was no confusion in his mind. This was not about Sarah's dress or her appearance. It was about something deeper, something that required action. He turned to the manager, his voice quiet but firm. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding," Alex said, his words cutting through the tension in the air. The room fell into an uneasy silence as the other diners began to notice the shift in energy. Sarah could feel all eyes on them, but she kept her focus on Alex. There was something in his eyes, a glimmer of certainty, that told her he wasn't going to let this go. The manager, clearly unsure of how to proceed, shifted his weight uneasily. "I don't believe so, sir. We have a dress code, and your wife's attire does not meet the standard." Alex's expression remained neutral, but his voice was steel. "My wife, you mean? The woman you just insulted?" The manager hesitated, not knowing how to respond. "You're about to find out just how much of a mistake you've made, and it won't be something you forget." The tension in the restaurant was palpable now, the other guests watching the exchange with increasing curiosity. But Alex wasn't done yet. He wasn't just going to defend Sarah in the moment. He was going to make sure everyone in this room understood the real meaning of respect. Alex's words echoed in the silent room, drawing the attention of every guest in the restaurant. The manager stood frozen, unsure of how to respond. The waitstaff, who had been hovering at a distance, now exchanged uneasy glances. The quiet murmur of the other patrons, who had previously been oblivious to the situation, now began to swell. They could sense something was about to happen, something they hadn't anticipated. Alex turned to Sarah, his hand gently taking hers as he guided her towards the table where they had been seated. "It's all right," he said quietly, reassuring her that they would get through this. But Sarah could feel her pulse quicken. Her husband's presence, calm and confident, was a stark contrast to the anxiety she had felt moments before. The manager, still flustered, stammered, "Sir, please, this is a high-end establishment. We have rules to follow, and I—" Alex cut him off, his voice now carrying the weight of authority. "I understand the need for rules, but your judgment here has been misguided. My wife's worth is not defined by what she wears, nor should it ever be judged in such a shallow manner." Sarah's heart swelled with both pride and gratitude as she looked at Alex. He wasn't just defending her. He was standing up against the very essence of judgment that ran deep in places like this. He wasn't just a billionaire who could buy his way into anything. He was a man who believed in fairness, respect, and doing what was right. The manager's face reddened as he attempted to maintain control of the situation. I apologize, but this is how we operate. Perhaps I can find you a seat elsewhere." "No," Alex said firmly. "We'll be leaving, but not before you understand the consequences of your actions." The manager's eyes widened, finally realizing the gravity of the situation. As Alex turned to leave, the room seemed to hold its collective breath. It was clear this wasn't just about a dress code anymore. It was about the fact that they had wrongly assumed Sarah didn't belong, simply because she wasn't dressed in a way they deemed acceptable. "I'm afraid this is not a simple misunderstanding," Alex continued, his voice steady. "I own this establishment, and after tonight your treatment of customers will be addressed. You will learn that no one, no matter their background, their appearance, or their wealth, should ever be dismissed in this way." The manager, now visibly shaking, didn't know how to respond. His mistake was clear, and there was nothing he could do to take it back. Alex led Sarah toward the door, his posture unwavering. As they exited the restaurant, Sarah glanced up at him, a mix of emotions flooding her chest. She had never wanted to be defended in such a public way, but she couldn't deny the sense of relief that came from knowing Alex would always stand up for her, and for what was right. They stepped out into the night, the cool air enveloping them as they walked toward the car. The ordeal wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. But one thing was certain. This would be a lesson that the restaurant and its staff would never forget. As Sarah and Alex walked toward the car, the weight of the situation began to settle in. Sarah, still processing everything that had just happened, couldn't help but feel a mixture of emotions: relief, anger, and, above all, gratitude. She had never expected the evening to unfold this way. What was supposed to be a simple dinner had turned into a public confrontation, exposing not just the biases of the restaurant staff, but also the judgments of the people who had silently observed the scene. Alex, however, remained calm. He had taken control of the situation in a way that left no room for doubt. His decision to speak up, to act swiftly and without hesitation, made it clear that he was not just defending his wife. He was taking a stand for every person who had ever been made to feel insignificant based on their appearance. As they reached the car, Alex opened the door for Sarah, his hand briefly brushing against hers as she slid into the passenger seat. He could see the conflict in her eyes, the unease that had lingered even after the confrontation. "You okay?" he asked softly, his voice steady but gentle. Sarah looked at him, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm fine," she replied, though she could feel the weight of the evening pressing down on her. "I just never imagined something like that could happen. To me, of all people." Alex climbed into the car, starting the engine, and began driving slowly through the quiet streets. "It's not about you, Sarah," he said. His eyes focused on the road ahead. "It's about the way people make assumptions based on things that don't matter. What you wear, how you look, they don't define your worth. But too many people act like they do." Sarah nodded, the truth of his words sinking in. It wasn't the first time she had faced judgment based on her appearance. But tonight had been different. The rejection had been sharp, unexpected, and painfully clear. And yet, here she was, sitting beside the one person who had always seen her for who she truly was, not for what the world expected her to be. They drove in silence for a few minutes, the soft hum of the car filling the space between them. Then, Alex broke the quiet. "I'm going to make sure something like that never happens again, not just in that restaurant, but in any of the places I own. People need to understand that no one deserves to be treated like that. Not you, not anyone." Sarah turned to look at him, her heart swelling with appreciation. She had always known Alex was a man of principles, but hearing him speak with such conviction made her proud in a way she hadn't expected. He wasn't just defending her, he was fighting for something bigger, something that could change how people treated each other, how they saw the world. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I didn't ask for all of this, but I'm grateful you were there." Alex smiled, reaching over and gently taking her hand. "You never need to ask, Sarah. I'll always be there, and I'll make sure the world sees you for the incredible woman you are." As they drove through the city, the tension that had filled the restaurant began to fade. The evening wasn't over, but Sarah felt something shifting inside her, something powerful, something liberating. She had been made to feel small, to feel like she didn't belong. But with Alex by her side, she knew that she could face anything. And together, they would make sure that no one else would ever be made to feel the same way again. It wasn't just about standing up for her. It was about standing up for every person who had ever been overlooked or underestimated. And that lesson, Sarah realized, was the one that would resonate long after the night ended. The next morning, the events of the previous evening felt like a dream. Sarah had hardly slept, her mind still replaying the humiliation at the restaurant and the shocking way Alex had stepped in. She had never wanted to be the center of attention, especially not in such an intense way. But as the sun rose, she realized that the power of what had happened was undeniable. It wasn't just about her, it was about the message Alex had sent and the way he had taken a stand for what was right. Meanwhile, Alex had been busy making calls. The moment they had left the restaurant, he had already set things into motion. The restaurant, which he had invested in years ago, was going to feel the impact of what had transpired the night before. But it wasn't just about punishing the manager or the staff for their actions. It was about changing the culture of the establishment, making it a place where everyone was treated with dignity, no matter their appearance or background. Sarah sat down at the breakfast table, her thoughts still swirling. She had a deep sense of gratitude for Alex, but there was something inside her that still felt unsettled. She wasn't sure how to reconcile the overwhelming feelings of being underestimated with the knowledge that she had been defended in a way that was far beyond what she had ever expected. As Alex entered the kitchen, his presence immediately filled the room. He was calm, but there was an underlying energy about him that Sarah could feel. He had a plan, and it was clear that this situation wasn't going to end with just a simple apology. "Everything's in motion," Alex said, his voice steady. "I spoke to the owner of the restaurant. They're going to implement a full staff training on customer treatment, and they're going to have a public apology issued. We're also donating to the charity event they were hosting. It's important that the message we're sending here is clear." Sarah looked up at him, a mixture of admiration and concern in her eyes. "Alex, I didn't want all of this. I just wanted a quiet dinner. I never asked for you to go to such lengths." Alex sat down beside her, taking her hand. "I know, Sarah, but sometimes when the world treats you unfairly, you need to make it clear that it's not acceptable. I didn't do this for my pride. I did it for you, for everyone who has been treated like they don't belong. You deserve to be seen for who you are, not judged for how you look or what you wear." Sarah's heart swelled. She had always believed in her own worth, but Alex had just shown her that the world had the power to change. If only people were brave enough to challenge the status quo. The phone rang, and Alex picked it up. As he listened, Sarah could sense a shift in his demeanor. He was calm, but his voice carried a note of authority that made it clear this wasn't just about dinner or a simple mistake. After a brief conversation, Alex hung up the phone and turned to Sarah. "The restaurant's making the right moves, but there's one more thing," he said, his gaze intense. "I'm planning a dinner for the board of directors. We're going to talk about how we make sure every customer, no matter who they are, feels respected and valued." Sarah smiled, feeling a weight lift off her chest. "Thank you, Alex," she said softly. "I never thought this would turn into something so big, but I'm proud of you. Proud of us." Alex squeezed her hand. "It's not about the size of the issue. It's about standing up for what's right. And we'll keep doing that together." As they sat together, Sarah realized that this wasn't just about one restaurant or one humiliating night. It was about creating a ripple effect that would remind everyone, from the most powerful to the most humble, that respect should never be based on appearances. And with Alex by her side, Sarah knew they were ready to take on whatever came next. Days passed, and the fallout from the previous evening's events continued to unfold. Alex had made it clear to the restaurant's management and staff that their behavior was unacceptable, and changes were being made. The staff training had begun, and a public apology was in the works, but there was still a lingering sense of unease in the air. Sarah, however, was beginning to feel a sense of peace. She had always prided herself on her ability to handle situations on her own. She never wanted to be defended, never wanted to stand out, and certainly didn't want attention drawn to her. But what Alex had done wasn't about attention. It was about making sure that what happened to her wouldn't happen to anyone else. He had used his position and influence to show the world that kindness and respect should never be overshadowed by appearances. The couple had attended a charity event a few nights after the incident, and as they mingled with the guests, Sarah couldn't help but notice the difference in the way people interacted with her. No longer were there cold glances or the subtle judgments she had grown accustomed to. The people she encountered seemed warmer, more genuine. Some even apologized for not realizing the gravity of the situation the other night, admitting that they too had been wrong. But for Sarah, the most meaningful change wasn't the way others now saw her. It was the way she saw herself. The night at the restaurant had been humiliating, yes, but it had also opened her eyes to her own strength. She wasn't defined by what people thought of her, nor by their fleeting judgments. She had learned that her worth was not for sale. No amount of money or status could change that. One evening, a few days after the charity event, Sarah sat down with Alex in their living room. The air was warm, the soft glow of the fireplace adding a sense of comfort to the room. Alex had just returned from another meeting with the restaurant's owner, ensuring that their new initiatives were being followed through. He sat down beside her, his eyes focused on her face as he reached out to gently take her hand. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his voice low and tender. Sarah smiled softly, looking into his eyes. "I'm good. Better than I thought I would be, actually. I never imagined something like this would happen, but I don't know. Maybe it was what I needed." Alex raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift from her chest as she spoke. "I think I needed to see what true support looks like. You didn't just defend me because you love me. You did it because you believe in what's right. That's what I needed. I've always known my worth, but I never thought I had the right to demand respect from anyone else. You've shown me that it's not only okay to stand up for myself, it's necessary." Alex's expression softened, and he squeezed her hand. "You've always known your worth, Sarah. You just needed to see it reflected back at you. And I'll always make sure you do." They sat together in silence for a few moments, the weight of the past few days settling into a peaceful understanding. Sarah had been tested, but she had come out stronger. And with Alex by her side, she knew she could face anything. The restaurant had learned a valuable lesson, and so had she. Respect is something that should be given freely, not earned by appearance, wealth, or status. And for the first time in a long time, Sarah felt truly seen, not just by Alex, but by herself. Sarah's story is a powerful reminder that we all deserve respect, no matter how we look or where we come from. No one should ever feel invisible or judged based on their appearance, and standing up for what's right can make a difference for everyone. Have you ever been treated unfairly or seen someone else experience it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear your experiences. Let's continue the conversation and inspire others to stand up for what's right, just like Sarah and Alex did. If this story resonated with you, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. Together, we can make the world a more respectful and understanding place, one story at a time. Thank you for watching, and remember, true worth is not determined by appearances, but by how we treat one another. See you in the next story.